with our mantra number 58 from Rishi Parashar, Rig Veda. And I'm sure most of you know Rishi Parashar is the father of Rishi Vyas.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Vyasji, okay.
Just one
So,
oh shoot.
Hershey, we can't hear you, so if you could just hold on a minute.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her.
Yeah.
Is there a way you can unmute yourself, Hershey? There you go.
I think I did, right?
There you go.
Oh, great. That's great.
Should I start all over again?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay. Mantra number 58, page number 187 by Rishi Parashar from Rig Veda. मनुष्य को वेद की शिक्षा है कि वह अग्नि तत्व से सदा लाभ उठाए और इससे उसका सौहार्द हो सकता है, क्योंकि इसी द्वारा वह चिरंजीव हो सकता है और अजरत्व को प्राप्त कर सकता है। अग्नि उसका चिर सुहृद है। आयुर्न प्राणो नित्य न सूनो। अग्नि आयुदाता प्राण शक्ति है और औरस पुत्रवत प्रिय है। जान पाए जन बात ये, अग्नि पुत्र समान। संग छोड़े न वह कभी, उसमें सबके प्राण। आयुदाता जान लो अग्नि को तुम भाई। अग्नि घटे जब देह में, हो जन्म दुखदाई। जठराग्नि के कारण होता पुष्ट शरीर। मंदाग्नि हो देह यदि, दुर्बल होत शरीर। प्राण शक्ति भी अग्नि है, अग्नि का ही रूप। आग ना हो यदि देह में, तन का बदले रूप। अग्नि के कई रूप है भाई, जात वेद व कथनी आई। उससे शून्य न कोई स्थान, कन कन का उसे जान ज्ञान।
Hershey, what is Horus?
Horus means बड़ा।
बड़ा?
अनुज होता है ना, हाँ अनुज होता है छोटा।
अच्छा।
Horus means बड़ा।
Okay.
Horus भाई और अनुज भाई, अनुज छोटा, Horus बड़ा।
Okay, thank you.
Okay, today is our Astavakra Gita day.
एक मिनट, so हृद का क्या मीनिंग होता है? Close to heart?
हाँ, close to heart को अच्छा लगने वाला।
Okay, ठीक है।
Okay, so dear to our heart. जैसे कहते हैं ना friend, any friend, one of the definition of friend is suhrid. So it's feels good to my heart. Okay. So we started the new chapter last week of Astavakra, and this is a chapter number 17. So the first verse we did, where Rishi Astavakra is saying that he has gained the fruit of knowledge as well as the fruit of practice of yoga, who contented and purified in his senses, ever revels in his aloneness indeed. Okay, so this is where we stop the class, because in this chapter again, Rishi Astavakra is giving us some indications also, and the fruit of this practice also, that how will we feel. So that's how we can check ourselves, whether our sadhana, our practice is moving towards the right direction or not. So now let's look at verse number 2. Na kadachit jagat yasmin tatvagya antakhidyati yataha ekhen ten idam brahmand mandalam purnam. Na means not kadachi, ever. Jagat, in the world. Yasmin, this. Tatvagya, knower of truth. Hantaha, khidyati. Hanta means, oh. Khidyati, feels misery. Yata means for. Eken, alone. Ten, by himself. Idam, this. Brahmand, mandalam, whole universe. Purnam, filled. Oh, the knower of truth knows no misery in this world. Why? For the whole universe is filled by himself alone. It's a really deep message in there. The knower of the truth knows no misery. Because knower of the truth recognizes the world as himself, the oneness. One. And he feels immediately the insignificant existence of himself. I'm just a small part of this whole universe. Total existence of the cosmos. So that's where the limited body, mind, intellect, they have been crushed now. They don't have much significance. So then ordinarily individual in us struggles very hard to acquire, to possess at least a part of the universe. And that's where the misery comes from. But the sage who has reached this level has discovered himself to be the self. The universe is nothing but waves of disturbances rising in him. He has realized his oneness with the entire universe. So there's no sense of alienation. So the whole universe is filled up by himself, knower of the truth. He knows no misery ever in the world. In Bhagavad Purana, at one place, Lord Krishna himself said, Nirpeksham munim shantam nirvairam samadarshanam anuvraj aham nityam uyete angrihi renudhi. The peaceful sage. So sage has to be peaceful. If there's agitation, it's not a sage. The peaceful sage who in his equal vision, samdarshina, moves about in the world with hatred to none. Ever free. And then Lord Krishna says, I constantly follow him from behind, seeking to purify myself with the dust of his feet. This is what Lord Krishna is confessing in Bhagavad Purana. Na jatuhu vishya ke api swaramam harshyanti ami salkihi pallav pritam iv ibham nimb palvaha. Na means not jatu at any time. Ke api, any. Swaramam, one content in the self. Harshyanti, please. Ami, those. Salki pallav pritam, who delights in salki leaves. That's the name of a tree, salki. Iv means as, ibham, elephant. Nimb palvaha, leaves of the neem tree, that bitter neem tree. So no sense objects ever please the one who is content in the self. Just as the neem leaves do not please an elephant who delights in the salki leaves. So the leaves of a salki plant, they are very delicious in taste for elephant. So an elephant who is fed on this most satisfying diet, will he ever feel attracted towards the bitter neem leaves? No matter how green and tender they look. So the same way the sage who is living the infinite bliss of the self, so completely content and fulfilled, how can he ever get enchanted by the bitter Maya? or the miserable sense objects. So this is what he's giving us an analogy. So if you have felt that bliss of God, how can you look for temporary happiness in the sense objects? In the Yoga Vashishta also, we read something like this. The joy that fills a mind which is thoughtless and undisturbed, such a perfect joy is not found in the blazing moon, nor in the palace of the Creator, nor for the King of gods, Indra himself. When you have seen the perfect, anything less than that does not appeal to you. So number 4, yatu bhogeshu bhukteshu na bhavati adhivasita abhukteshu nirakankshi tadrisha bhav durlabha. Ya means who means indeed bhogeshu, in the object of enjoyment, bhog padarth, bhukteshu, experience, na bhavati, not is, adhivasita, one whom impressions are left, abhukteshu, in things not yet enjoyed, nirakankshi, not hankering after, tadrisha, such a one, bhav durlabha, rare in the world. So Rishi Astavakra is saying, rare in the world is he on whom impressions are not left of things which had experienced, or one who does not hanker after things not yet enjoyed. So in other words, most of the people are running after the objects which they have enjoyed or which they have not enjoyed. They are constantly running after the Maya. This is rare in the world. So this is a sage who has dissolved his ego in the experience of his oneness with the universal self. And he does do the actions, but his actions are egoless, because ego is bhog and bhukt.
Hershji,
Yes,
can you go a little slower, please?
sure,
I have a request.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I think with this phone, it's a little different. I cannot see everybody, and but I'll definitely go slower. So egoless actions are always they cannot leave any impressions, egoless actions. Because a person is doing the actions, but this is the prarabdha. According to the prarabdha, the actions are happening. So that's why Rishi Astavakra is indicating that these are like a pseudo activities of a man of a perfection. And they cannot entangle him with their vasanas. And this sage is in the infinite blissful self himself. So there is no restlessness. See, abhukteshu nirakankshi. So that means there is no restlessness, no hankering after the objects. All the bodily functions, all the activities which other people see, they are there, but the person is not entrapped in these bodily activities or with the objects which he has. This sage belongs to a category totally different from ours. They say he is a law unto himself. He is so rare. Okay, so that's why he said, Bhav Durlabha. Tadrisha bhav durlabha. Such a one is rare in the world. But how did he reach there? First, with the total understanding, and then with the sadhana. And we all are moving towards that state, but it depends how much sadhana we are doing. How much do we really want this bliss of God? How can we stay away from these sensual objects, the Maya? In the next one, he says, Bhubukshuhu ihi sansare, mumukshuhu api drishyate, bhog moksha nirakankshi, virlaha hi mahashaya. Now he's using the word mahashya for this sage. Mahashya means a perfect sage. Mahashya. Bhubukshuhu, one who seeks worldly enjoyment. See, mumukshu, the one who is seeking for a moksha. Bhubukshu, one who seeks worldly enjoyment. He means here, sansare, in the world. Mumukshu, one who desires liberation. Api means also, drishyate is seen. Bhog moksha nirakankshi, not desirous of enjoyment or liberation. Bhog and moksha. Virlaha, rare.
I think her phone is frozen. Hersh ji?
Can you record?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Bubukshu is sansare, mumukshu api drishyate, bhog moksha nirakankshi, virlahi mahashya. So that was the verse we were looking at. So those, we did not go through the word by word. So mumukshu is one who desires liberation, and bubukshu is the one who seeks for worldly enjoyment.
हर्षी
It's
आपकी
almost like
आवाज
a-
बहुत कम आ रही है वॉल्यूम बहुत
Okay.
कम है
वॉल्यूम कम है, ये माइक का फोन है.
अब ठीक हो गई अब फर्क पड़ गया
अब ठीक होगी. Let me just move little
Move it
closer.
closer. Move it closer.
Yeah. Is it okay now? Is it better?
It's better.
Okay.
Not great.
So another name for mumukshu will be like a yogi, and for bubukshu that will be a bhogi. Okay, so common words which we normally use. So drishyate means is seen. Bhog moksha nirakankshi, not desirous of enjoyment or liberation. Virlaha, rare. He means indeed Mahashya, noble-minded sage. Mahashya. Those who seek worldly enjoyments and those desirous of liberation, both are found in this world. But rare indeed is the noble-minded sage who is not desirous of either enjoyment or liberation. Pretty deep verse. So it's almost like a person is liberated while living. Jivan Mukta. He is not looking for a moksha because he is already mukta. Because a seeker who wants mukti has not reached mukti. Seeker who is looking for the pleasure in the senses, that means has not understood the real purpose of life. So a person who is not desirous of either is a very rare person indeed. Virla. Okay, it's almost like if somebody is hungry, it's natural that he'll be anxious to enjoy his dinner. The person who is drowning will be anxious to get saved. But a sage who has already liberated himself from this thraldom of matter and he realized the infinite bliss, he is not desirous of either enjoyment or liberation. And such a perfect sage is called Mahashya. We read a similar verse in Bhagavad Gita also. Chapter 7, verse number 3.
Okay.
It's being recorded, Mike. Sorry about that, guys. So, chapter 7, verse number 3 in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said, Manushya naam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhye yatataamapi siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvata. He said, 1% in thousands of men strives for perfection. And 1% among the blessed ones striving thus knows me in reality. So in other words, people are striving to become better. So they are seeking for the liberation. And majority of them not even seeking. So rare is a person who reaches there. So that's what Lord Krishna is talking about in this verse. Like hardly one. And Astavakra Rishi is saying, Viralahi Mahashya. Okay. Then number 6. Dharam arth kam muksheshu jivite marne tatha kasya api udar chitasya hai upadeyata nahi. Dharam. We use this word quite a bit. Dharam. Dharam means piety. Arth, wealth. Kam, desires. Moksha, liberation. Jivite, in life. Marne, in death. Tatha means as well as. Kasya api, rare. Udar chitasya, of a broad-minded. Udar chit. Haya upadhyataha, attraction or aversion. Na means not, he means indeed. Rare is the broad-minded person who has neither attraction nor aversion to dharam, to arth, to kam, and to moksha, as well as life and death. So rare is that person, because we all strive so hard to move towards or to get to these purusharths, the 4 goals of life. It's like all the discipline we do, even when we are just doing something religious, the duties we are doing, a little ego in us says, I am dharmic, or I have earned wealth. So all disciplines for the ego has been left behind for this kind of a rare person. That doesn't mean that he is not following his duties, but there's no sense of that I am doing it. That ego has left behind. Because as long as the ego persists, the duties pertaining to these 4 goals of life, we definitely respect. We follow them faithfully.
and they can prepare the ego for its final merger in the infinite self. See, ultimately, by following these four, we got to dissolve our ego. So that clarity has to be there. But if after going through all these four, our ego becomes fattened, then we have gone the other way around. So Rishi Astavakra is saying, rare indeed is that man of infinite wisdom, the true sage, who has risen above these four worldly goals of life, who has ended his ego. That's what it really means. Ended his ego and has become indifferent to all of them. And moreover, even to life and death also. Because this person understands this life and death is pertaining to this physical body. The soul never dies. It is one with the Paramatma. So life and death are conditions of the body over which the ego alone can grow anxious. Whenever anxiety is there, higher the anxiety, more the ego. More the restlessness, bigger the ego. To the immortal self, the existence or the absence of the illusory body is of no consequence at all. Whether it lives or whether it dies. It's almost like saying that why should the ocean worry over the birth and the death of a wave? Coming into a human body or going into an animal body or going into a divine body or going into a bird body, these are just the waves in this big world. So to a sage, it doesn't make any difference at all. He has risen above that ego. Number 7. Vanchaha no vishwa vilye no desha tasya jastito yatha jivikyaha tasmat dhanyah aste yatha sukham. Vancha, longing. See, just like a supriha. These are terms for longing. It's like a mental state, longing. Na means not, Vishwa Vilye, in the dissolution of the universe. Vishwa is the universe, Vilye, like a vileen, dissolving. Na dveshaha, not aversion. Tasya means it's, cha means and, sthito, in existence. Yatha jivikyaha, with whatever living turns up by itself. In other words, whatever the mode of living is. The smart means so, dhanya, the blessed one, aste, lives, yatha sukham, happily. The man of wisdom does not feel any longing for the dissolution of the universe or any aversion towards its existence. So this creation or dissolution, this man of wisdom knows it's going to happen. It's a happening. Things will keep on changing. Some will die and the new one will come. Does not feel any longing and does not feel any aversion. This has risen above rag and dvesh. He, the blessed one, therefore lives happily in whatever turns up as his lot happily. So living in the self as the self, the man of wisdom has gained all that is to be gained. And he has no desires for anything. He demands nothing. He is above all needs. At a quiet time, we get to sit back and see what kind of desires we have. In our case, there could be some tamasic desires, some rajasic desires, and some sattvic desires. We have to take an inventory of it. So if we want to move fast towards this category of a sage, reduce the desires. Because he demands nothing. What are our demands? He needs nothing. He is full. He feels one with everything. So this universe is a dust particle where what is the significance to our body? If the whole universe is just like a dust, whether it exists or not can be of no concern for him. And how did this happen? He pulled down the veil of ignorance. He has rediscovered his divine nature. He has no more any identification with his body. See, there are times when we have identification. Sometimes we have very strong identification, and there are times when we don't have identification with the body. So, but with this person, he has no more any identification with his body altogether. Such a sage is not anxious any longer for the dissolution of the universe, and no aversion towards its play of polarity. So this person has awakened them all. This is like he is fully awakened. From our viewpoint, he is still a member of the community with a physical body, and should not, at least his body, have the bare necessities of existence of food, clothing, and shelter. That's why Astavakra ji is explaining that a man of perfection lives in his own world of perfect bliss, and his body continues its existence, living upon whatever comes to him unasked. This is what this yatha jivika, whatever comes, whatever is happening, it's okay with this kind of a person. So such a master, even though lives with us, is no more a native of this world. Sometimes the ordinary people will think this is a person who's a fool, doesn't have any worldly ambition, or lazy, sitting and meditating, staying happy when everybody else is miserable. Because he is happy. Dhanyaha aste yatha sukham. He is always happy no matter what turns up. Because he understands that this whole world is owned by the infinite God, Brahm. And the nature of Brahm is bliss. So this person is always blissful, always happy. Let's do one more, then we'll stop. Kritarthaha anen jnanen iti evam galit dhi kriti pashyan shrivan saprishan jigran ashnan aste yatha sukham. I'm sure most of you have studied Bhagavad Gita. This sounds just like the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Kritartha, fulfilled. Anen, by this. Jnanen, by wisdom. Iti means thus. Evam. So iti evam means like a thus. Galit dhi, with the mind absorbed. Kriti, content. Pashyan, seeing. Shravnan, hearing. Suppression, touching. Jigran, smelling. Ashnan, eating. Asate, lives. Yatha sukham, happily. Being fulfilled by this wisdom of the self, Wisdom of the self means I am the Atma. I am part of God. So being fulfilled by this wisdom of the self and with his mind absorbed. Absorbed where? Absorbed in the self and contented in the self. The wise man lives happily. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and eating. So in other words, he's doing everything what rest of us are doing. But his mind, total mind, is absorbed in the self, and he understands that self is part of the universal self. See, mind is fully rested. Ordinarily, a human mind is restless. And it's more restless when it's a discontent. So when the mind is discontented, what happens? The desires are generated. And there are storms in the thought content in the mind. And then a person is seeking fulfillment. And how the fulfillment? Through the desire gratifications in the sense world. And the mind is dashing towards the objects. It wants to acquire, it wants to enjoy. But contrary to this, is telling us the mind of a man of perfection has discovered a complete sense of a fulfillment. That's what that Kritartha means. Complete sense of fulfillment. We are in the experiences of the infinite self. So then there's no question about his mind roaming away from him into the world of sense pleasures. He remains at peace with himself. Even in the world around, mind is always absorbed in the self. Normally our mind is the one which just roams outside. So he is in harmony with everything as they are around him under all circumstances. It's not only a very conducive circumstances, in all circumstances. So externally, when the world lashes on him, he receives them, but he never reacts to them. Okay? This is the nature of the world. Sometimes the circumstances, sometimes the people, sometimes our own body, sometimes the financial condition of the world, or sometimes the COVID. These are the lashes. But this kind of a person is in harmony with everything, whatever comes to him. He receives them, he never reacts to them. That is from the external. And inwardly, in his supreme happiness, he lives seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating. So in short, he never runs away from the world, nor has he any aversion towards the world. So he doesn't have any longing, and he doesn't want to reject anything either. Whatever is happening, that's fine. So assimilating sense experiences, he spends his days peacefully, living in this world. In other words, eating in the world through all his mouths. Okay, it's not just a one mouth. We are eating through our ears also. We are eating with our eyes also, with our nose also. Okay, so since the wise man lives in the same world, it's not a different world he lives in. He lives in the same world. Externally, he must behave as any other human being. But in his inner wisdom alone, he is a Superman. He is a Superman. He doesn't react. He is peaceful. He is absorbed totally in the blissful infinite. And that is our goal actually. We are all longing for that. We won't stop short of that. But it all depends upon us how fast we want to reach there. Do we want to play around a little bit more? Or do we want to just feel that blissfulness right now, no matter what? Okay, let's stop it here. Anybody, any question? So we'll start with verse number 9. And again, sorry for this computer problem today, but I hope you could hear me okay with all these disturbances.